Welcome back to Wednesday's Words, a weekly gathering of some of the thoughts that I've had that I hope might resonate with you, or you might find useful, or you might disagree with, and let me know. Either is fine. So I want to share with you today quite a deep concern that I'm having through a lot of conversations that I'm having with organisations. And when I mention the word well-being, I am noticing people's eyes glazing over slightly as they shift uncomfortably in their seat and say, do you know what, we kind of did well-being in the pandemic and we need to move forward from that. And I have to say, you are wrong if you have that approach. Well-being should still and always be fundamental to our organisations. We did put a lot of focus, and rightly so, on well-being as we were going through the pandemic. We were all going through it at the same time. We all appreciated that we were going through the same storm, and we're coming out of it. But I think there are still significant issues, and what we're seeing as a kind of effect from the pandemic, we're not seeing the full picture yet. And what we do know, we kind of have to learn from what we've just been through, is that, the pandemic seemingly kind of came out of nowhere. It was massively unexpected. And you know what? Something else unexpected is going to come along our way. Maybe not on a global basis, maybe not on a national basis, maybe just within our circle. That's, the unexpected is going to happen. We know that. It's the only thing we can be certain of, that the unexpected is going to happen at some point. And so we need to focus in on our well-being and our organisations in order to support people to remain resilient in those times when we really need them to be resilient, both mentally, physically, and emotionally. And if you think that mental health issues really aren't appearing in the same way, I think you need to think again. Deloitte, just a few weeks ago, issued a report that said that mental health was costing organisations £45 billion in 2019. In 2022, that figure has risen to 56 billion. So there is still significant issues with mental health, and the costs of that are mainly out through lost time, reduced productivity, and absenteeism. So how can we keep well-being on our agenda, our daily agenda? So we know that, for example, we are now working in a really different way. The hybrid world is here, and I think it's here to stay. And I think that has brought some positivities to some people. I think there's less focus on presenteeism by working in a remote way, and I think it does offer more flexibility. However, what I am also seeing is that people are feeling less engaged. They are feeling more stressed, and they are feeling a lack of connection with people in their organisations. And those three things are going to lead to a reduction in our overall well-being. In a recent study by McKinsey, they highlighted that 62% of employees have struggled with mental health since COVID, and only 30% of those feel confident enough to talk to their managers. So how do we go about this? How do we go about dealing with it? Well, first of all, well-being has got to become part of our daily conversations, our daily focus. And it's not just on the leaders of the organisation. I think everyone needs to have a personal responsibility for their own well-being, but also the social responsibility of other people's well-being within our organisation. And if we all have an understanding as to what their well-being is, we all have an understanding as to the small changes we can all make, both personally and professionally, that will make a difference to our overall well-being. We need to have training around that. We need to have an understanding around that. I think if we're working in a hybrid way, we need to be really mindful of how many meetings we are asking people to go to. People are zoomed out. They are literally going from one online meeting to another online meeting with no time to process, to no time to think about or reflect about the meeting that they've just been to. And that is causing quite high significant levels of stress. When we are working in a hybrid way, that's when whoever is leading the meeting, do you know what? We have to ramp up being human. We have to find ways of helping people feel connected to their organization and remain connected. So how can we use those meetings in order to be able to do that? A really simple thing before we get into the transaction of the meeting, just checking in with people just to see how they are, having a positive energy booster, getting them into breakout rooms, getting them talking, doing polls, having feedback via chat, whatever it takes to get people involved so they're not just sitting there passively with their cameras off and feeling disconnected to you and your organizations. So that's one way that we can start to increase well-being. When we're thinking about scheduling for people to come into the office, we've got to be clever about this. We have to give an opportunity for teams to come together so that, again, we are supporting that sense of collaboration and that connection. And don't just think about our teams, but who else would we like to have in the office at the same time so we can cross collaborate with perhaps other teams who can support us. Are we really thinking about our workspaces and how we can set our workspaces up so we can collaborate and we can connect with people? Are we thinking in terms of our well-being about how we are focusing in on people's strengths? Do we really know what our team strengths are? And are we really using those strengths on a daily basis? Those strengths that really energize us, that come easily to us, that we enjoy using. What are your strengths? What are your team strengths? What are your organization strengths? How are you using those strengths to support people in times of uncertainty? How are you using those strengths in order to help support overall resilience? Because it's really important to organizations that we keep our people happy, we keep our people engaged, that we keep people and their well-being uppermost in our minds. Because then, if we don't, then guess what? People are going to leave. People have started to leave already. So think about these things. Don't glaze over. Next time I talk to you about well-being, don't glaze over to it. I'd love to hear what you're doing in order to maintain and sustain well-being in your organizations. Until next week.